Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Before we start, a quick announcement. Every single one of these KCC videos is now being uploaded to the KCC Patreon, where you can watch completely ad-free. Check it out at the link in the top of the description down below. Alright, our first story today comes to us from Rye-on-the-Rocks. You want me to make a patient stay late so you can skip work during the snow and you refuse to stay late? Fine, now you have to stay late every day. Let's jump right in. Once upon a time, I worked in a research hospital coordinating drug studies. This one's gonna go against the grain of some of the stories here. When you work in healthcare, following the written laws and rules to the letter is of the utmost importance. We run into trouble when people begin inventing their own rules and playing by them. The hardest part of my job was convincing other departments to also do their jobs. And sometimes, it was like pulling teeth asking people to perform their duties even at a basic level. Ask a nurse to draw a basic 4-tube blood kit, you got an eye roll. Ask the pharmacy to stay 5 minutes past the end of the workday? Nope, they couldn't do that. They were out at 4:30. That second scenario is the important one for the purposes of this story. That department refuses to stay late. I could understand why they'd feel that way and strive to maintain as steady a schedule as possible. But in the world of sick and dying people, sometimes things came up. Mind you, I regularly had to stay an hour or two past the end of my shift to take care of problems and data entry. We could get overtime pay or flex our schedules pretty easily, at least in my department. This hospital was in a very snowy metropolitan area, and one time years ago, we were projected to get a massive blizzard. Every one of us, the nurses, the physicians, the pharmacists, and the coordinators were essential employees, or whatever they called it before COVID popularized the term, and had to come in regardless of the weather. So every one of us should have been planning to be there the next day, even if the weather was awful. We had to call in sick if we missed work for weather reasons. The afternoon before the storm was due to begin, we had a patient in clinic. Typically, patients on this particular research study got a doctor's appointment and then treatment immediately after. However, this individual had a job that made him prefer getting his clinic visit done in the afternoon and his treatment early the next morning. It was unusual, but it wasn't hard to accommodate him. While most of us had accepted our fate of driving in the snow the next morning, the investigational drug department was especially not too excited about the prospect of having to come in during the blizzard. So at 3:30, an hour before the pharmacy closes, they send me a Slack message and ask us what the possibility of doing this patient's treatment today might be so they don't have to come in for it tomorrow. Really? You're asking us now? This was on your docket all day. Anyhow, I begrudgingly went to find the patient in the waiting room and ask. He wasn't thrilled but says he'll do it if he has to. I let the pharmacy know. Then they asked me what the status of the patient was. Clinic was running behind as usual and we hadn't cleared the patient for treatment yet. The investigational pharmacy needed at least 20 minutes to prep the drugs needed, so they told us we had until 4 p.m. to get them the signed order. The process for getting a drug order filled involved getting a signed order from a doctor after a patient has been cleared to get a drug, walking it outside across the street to the pharmacy, handing the signed prescription to a pharmacist, waiting for the drug, walking it back to the patient in the first building. This was absolutely not going to happen in 12 minutes. At 4:01, pharmacy sent me a very rude Slack message indicating that I basically missed my window to get the patient in today and I should do a better job next time. As coordinator, you get blamed for absolutely everything, even if it was the fault of a doctor who was bad at time management. Their message said something along the lines of, if you don't come up and give a pharmacist the order by 4:05, there's nothing we can do for your patient. In the future, you should get the order signed and over to us ahead of time so we can prep it. Ahead of time in this case meant that a patient would be prescribed a drug but wasn't yet cleared by a doctor to receive that drug. In my training, the pharmacy director told us we were never ever supposed to do this. It was a humongous no-no and would be grounds for a massive lawsuit if anything went wrong. You absolutely don't prep a drug unless the patient receiving it is cleared for treatment by a physician. I really liked the pharmacy director, and I messaged her regularly with questions about drugs patients might be considering while on study, but she wasn't super involved in the day-to-day of the pharmacy workers and tended to focus on bigger picture tasks, hence why her employees were inventing their own rules and demands. So I'm supposed to get this patient in today, right now, eh? Alright, if you insist. So I got the order signed by the physician ahead of seeing the patient. They didn't really give a crap. Next step, in the words of the person who messaged me, was to take it to a pharmacist, eh? You said I had to take it to a pharmacist by 4:05, right? What if, instead of walking it directly to the pharmacy, I took it directly to the pharmacy director? She was still a pharmacist and could do everything the folks in the investigational drug dispensary could do. I told her that we hadn't cleared this patient, but I had been urged by pharmacy to dispense the drug anyhow, so that the patient wouldn't have to come in tomorrow for their treatment. She looked puzzled and asked if the patient was rescheduled while in clinic. I told her no, this was at the request of the pharmacy staff, so they wouldn't have to come in during a snowstorm. I showed her the message her employee had sent me. Pharmacy director was unhappy with this and said someone would just have to stay late if this was the plan. I referred her to the Slack message that said I had missed my window because they didn't plan to stay late. Director was livid and told me that she personally was going to stay late to make sure this went through. We went to the pharmacy from her office and she intended to scold this employee, but of course, everyone was gone. So the two of us went and got the drug at 4:35, and I got it back to the patient. I got a call from him a week later indicating that he actually preferred getting Thursday afternoon treatment instead of having it on Friday morning, and wanted to keep that schedule going forward. I relayed this to the head of the pharmacy. I expressed uncertainty with how we'd handle this, and she said she'd get back with me. We all got an email a few days later saying that the investigational drug department would now be staying open until 5:30, and one person would be staying late every day, rotating every day so that someone could cover late drug orders. But I knew she only had 3 pharmacists, and they were all salaried, not hourly, which meant some of them would be covering more than 1 late hour a week. I went to get this patient's next dose of drugs a few weeks later at about 4:45. The same woman who'd asked me to break the rules was working. I asked how she was doing, and she told me she was having to work 3 4:30 to 5:30s a week, presumably because she tried to act unethically a few weeks prior. She handed me the pill bottle and slammed the window in my face. And to think, if the pharmacist would have just shut up and done their jobs like they were supposed to and come in during one snowstorm, they'd still be able to leave at 4:30 every day. If you work in healthcare or health research, don't make your own rules, kids. Jumping down to the comment section in this one, we have one from a user called Stabmaster. Ooh. Not everyone can get flex time, and some people get nothing but crap for staying even 1 minute into OT. Plus, if it's anything like some of the places I've worked for, staying 5 minutes once means that everyone tries to get you to keep doing that, then 10, then 15, etc. That said, the way they handled that, especially the berating you for something that, per their own policies, was straight up not allowed, was especially crap to the bull level. If you're there until 4:30, then don't be angry if you have things that keep coming in until then. Especially don't be rude to people that have the full ability to go over your head and get you called out for when you are blatantly breaking a rule. Entitlement blinds everyone eventually, I guess. OP replied to this comment and said, "And that's the thing. I feel for these people and agree that their time should be respected. But this is going to keep happening, so something needs to be put in place on their end. Patients can't just not get a drug because they can't get their act together." OP, I think you mentioned in your post that you get flex and overtime, but the pharmacist didn't, so why would they want to work extra time for free? I'm not quite understanding that part of the story. Yes, I know you need to get the drugs to them, but somebody higher up isn't paying them to be there for that extra time. In a lot of industries and not just pharmacy work, there's always going to be quote-unquote emergencies or late orders, and honestly, I can see their point of view in just wanting to close down when their time is done and leave. Let's open this up to comments though. Everybody who's listening to this right now, if you could comment down below and let me know what you think. Do you think that the pharmacist should have been guilted into staying later, or that OP took the right route in making them all have to stay later, regardless of whether they want to or not. Our next story today comes to us from No Language 7256. Unsuitable. Let's jump right in. Some background. I'm in Australia, I'm currently a 32-year-old male, and this occurred this year. I used to do admin work in defense, and during that time, I got rather qualified and experienced, specifically in people management and training people. I then left the uniform for various reasons, including depression caused by my time there. I got a new job and intentionally got a position way below my capabilities so I could focus on my mental health while still working. It was a hotline for a government assistance program. This position was good for about 4 years. Over that time, I started using some of my skills more and built up my confidence again. I also was acting in higher positions almost the entire time. Initiating incident. So after all the COVID lockdowns finally finished, there was a permanent spot in a higher position available. By this time, I was the longest serving person remaining in the team, and I was the most qualified. I knew they planned on getting the incumbent to do 2 roles, both of which I knew thoroughly. Went through the interview process, answered all the questions, explained how I could do the role immediately without training, etc. Had to wait a few weeks to find out the result, since it's still government and they don't do these things super fast. Then I got told that I was found not suitable. I was floored. I asked for an explanation, and all I was told was it was a very competitive round. When I asked what I could have done to be more competitive, I got the same answer. To make things worse, they asked me to train the guy who got the role. Immediately, I brought up the duty statement, which had the list of tasks for my role. Remember, it's super easy. Basically, just answer the phone and reply to emails. I also got out the public service level expectations and highlighted the appropriate bits for my level. Cue malicious compliance. Since I wasn't suitable to work at higher levels, I immediately stopped all work that wasn't at my level or in my job description. To say this put a dent into the extra work I was doing would be an understatement. I used to help out management with sorting out interpersonal disputes. I used to run a bunch of reports to find and sort out work that was missed. And I used to help the other teams do their work. So at this point, my days became super easy. I would do about 10% of what I used to, as that 10% was my actual job. The training I was doing was directing the guy to the procedures, and if he had questions, directing him to ask his supervisor. It was about a week of this before management noticed the training wasn't very in-depth. One by one, they asked me what was going on. Our structure had 6 supervisors at that time. Each and every time I said the same thing. Unfortunately, I was found unsuitable for the role, so I can't teach someone how to do it. To say they were pissed would also be an understatement, but they tried to stay professional. They then started questioning why I stopped doing all the extra work that I had been doing for years. I directed their attention to my duty statement and asked where it lists that work. They said the extra duties as directed. I then asked how that aligns with the level expectations, which are surprisingly clear and helpful. At this point, most stopped trying. During all this sudden free time I had, I started to search for a new job. It only took 2 weeks to go for interviews, be found suitable, and get a new job. Apparently, I'm incredibly competitive at this level. Who knew? The fallout. The new job is significantly easier, at the level I was unsuitable for, and gives me much more money than they were offering. Additionally, I have kept in touch with some people there. The management are floundering as interpersonal problems are cropping up. The team can't keep up with the workload, and at least 3 more people have gotten new jobs, with at least 2 looking for other employment, leaving 1 person left in the hotline team that will know what they're doing. It's a shame really, because I like that program and probably would have stayed for a long time. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Not So Chi Couple. It says, I've heard this before. Management sees someone doing great at their job and don't want to promote them out of it because they would lose a valuable person in that position. What they always forget is that if they decide someone is that important, you have to keep them happy. Raises, title changes, accolades, try something. It isn't that hard. OP responded to this comment and said, The worst part is that the higher position was still in the same team doing one of the roles I had been acting in for the previous 4 years. My actual role was more of a demotion at that point. OP, what you did was perfect. Sometimes management needs to be taught a lesson that if they don't promote you, then all the extra things you're doing that aren't in your job description just aren't going to be done, and they're going to realize how valuable you are to the company. The other option you have is to pack your bags and move on, which is exactly what you did. So I think this was the best outcome you could have hoped for. You got into a better position for better pay at a different company, doing exactly what you want to do. Well done, OP. Our last story today comes to us from Nutella Zamboni. Dress code violation A. I'll follow it to the letter then. Let's jump right in. Someone suggested I make this a topic and post of its own, so my all-male high school had a business professional dress code, and it was the early 90s, so there were a lot of options as far as color, style, fit, etc. I got a detention for not wearing a belt, but my dress pants had a built-in belt made of the same fabric as the pants. The disciplinarian wouldn't budge because the dress code said belt had to be leather, so off to detention I went. Cue me thinking of how to maliciously comply, and my grandfather was a master tailor who would do anything for me. I went to big and tall clearance section and bought the ugliest, loudest, and biggest rayon shirt and pants I could find. My grandfather darted the shirt in as many places as he could. He took in the pants so much the pockets touched the center back seam, put 3-inch cuffs on them, pleats on the back, and tapered the ankles to 8 inches with a huge break. When he was done, he had me try it on and gave me an orange leather belt to go with them. I can't even begin to tell you how many neon colors were on the shirt. Pants were a muted olive green, orange belt, hideous multicolored argyle socks, white patent leather slip-on dress shoe, and since it was winter, I paired it with a 70s chocolate brown pleather trench coat. I went to school strutting like a peacock. Disciplinarian takes one look at me and tells me to get in his office. While in his office, he asks me if I think the dress code is a joke, to which I tell him absolutely not. I don't want to get in more trouble for violating it, which is why I'm in dress code. He looks like he's about to flip his crap when he realizes, because he knows the book like the back of his hand, that the dress code says all clothes must be properly fitted and tailored. Dress pants or khaki style pants, shirts can be long sleeve or short with a collar, dress socks to be worn at all times, dress shoes or boat shoes, and a leather belt must always be worn. There's more, but it applies to turtlenecks, jackets, blazers, and sweaters. He's looking at me with his eyes twitching and asks me if I know how ridiculous I look. I told him that I think I look awesome, and I have a well-tailored fitting outfit with a leather belt, dress socks, and shoes. He says, but you don't come close to matching. I ask him where it says we have to match in the dress code. He tells me to get the F out of his sight. Down in the comment section of this one, there's one from a user called Cayman718. It says, I hope he understood that your colorful outfit was the result of his enforcing the leather belt aspect of the dress code to the letter, instead of accepting the belt that was part of your original pants. OP replied to this comment and said he did. He and I got along famously for 4 years, and he got a kick out of how much I would stretch the limits of things. Another example is our hair couldn't touch our collar. I slicked my hair back so you really couldn't tell how long it was, but it all got to a point where it was below my collar. He reminded me that my hair was touching my collar, and I told him I would fix it as soon as I could. So I got a really tight perm, and I looked like Be Real from Cypress Hill when he had a fro. Check out all 3 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.